Hello and welcome back to the Ask podcast. It is so fabulous to be with you here today on this not so fine April day, but I'm sure you are having a great time, and I certainly am very excited to welcome our guest today. I want to start with an apology for the last guest because it turns out I was pronouncing her name wrong for the entire podcast. So if you see Mrs. Drayton Freer in the corridor, do address her as such, because I've been feeling guilty about it ever since, and now I have addressed my error. I know Louis looks appropriately horror-stricken, but back to normal things. I am Mrs. Summers, the Deputy Head of English and Drama at John Hampden, and I've got my lovely co-host.
I am Mr. Till, I'm the head of the sixth form.
Woohoo. Oh yeah, it's really important now. We have to do as he says. We never did before. And I've got...
see that happening somehow.
No, true. And we've got some lovely panellists, some returners, and some absolutely brand newbies. If you want to very briefly introduce yourself, that'd be lovely.
Okay, hello, I'm Louis, I'm in year 11.
Hi, I'm George, I'm in year 9.
And Evan in year 10.
And how many times have you been? Is this your third time?
Third, yes.
Third time. Absolute veteran of the podcast
Like a team
now.
captain, like on a panel show when you have a team captain.
Everybody's
That's
looking to you,
essentially
Evan. No
Till's
pressure.
role.
And of course we have our incredible, fabulous guest, Miss Rose of the music department, come to see us today to talk about a very niche and exciting topic that I'm sure she's going to tell us all about in a little bit. So, Mom, if you wouldn't mind, we always begin with why this topic? Like, what made you seem to jump at it immediately. What was it about this topic that jumped out to you? And what is your topic as well? That would be great.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. Really looking forward to chatting with you. My topic, straight off the bat, was mosh pits. How to be in a mosh pit, what it means to actually participate in music making. So, as a musician, I love listening to music, I love studying music, but being in music and experiencing music as a live event is something that is a really fantastic experience. Those experiences can vary. It can be a sit-down concert whereby you are listening to a performance, appreciating them from the comfort of a seat. Perfectly valid way of enjoying a musical performance. There is in your living room or in your bedrooms, listening to music with incredibly great quality headphones, listening to all of the stylization, all of the tiny little details that come with a recording. Another type of performance though that I find absolutely thrilling is that of being in a live performance venue whereby it is not just the musicians, but it is the audience that creates the atmosphere in the room. And that is why the sort of setup of a mosh pit is a really quite a unique arrangement of people. So sort of several years ago I did a lot of research into ethnomusicology, so the role of people and music, the relationship between them is something that has been part of music education and music study for like as long as music studies has existed for. And as an ethnographer, I did a lot of extensive research on mosh pits, specifically in the punk scene, up in my hometown of Leeds, comparing and contrasting different punk scenes, depending on the age of those people, the gender of those people, and the way in which music is performed, as I say, not just by the musicians, but by the audiences as well. So I'll be I'll be keen to give you lots of details.
Do we have to start by, for those who, because obviously I'm very familiar with mosh pits, not a weekend goes by when you can't, I think people can tell that most weekends a mosh pit is where I've been for the most. But if people don't know what it is, could you give us a definition of
absolutely.
The mosh pit?
Yeah, the mosh pit. So the way in which you would probably define it is thinking, okay, you have a live performance on stage, you have a sizable audience, a standing audience. Within that space, there are people, right? There are lots and lots of people, and the way in which those people can kind of be arranged in that room is decided purely by those members of the audience, right? They're not sat down, they are stood up, and the pit, a mosh pit itself, is when there is a collection of people that, most importantly, consensually agree to be in the middle of that space And there is so much movement. There is so much movement that happens within those spaces, okay? They are spaces whereby the energy of the music is allowing people to literally collide in with one another. Now, the way in which that happens is really, really diverse, but there are some kind of unspoken rules, some unspoken expectations that come with creating not just an energetic space, but also a really safe space as well. So the way in which sort of conventional mosh pits might work is that you would have, if you have really fast, really energetic music, people will often be bouncing around. You will feel your calves by the end of it. But the idea is that you are basically colliding with each other. You might be bouncing like up and down in one particular space, but you might also be colliding with people using, most importantly, kind of your shoulders, your upper arms particularly. And this idea that it's like these, the only way I can describe it is like little atoms that are kind of colliding, jumping in and around each other, bouncing around each other, and feeling like there's like a real freedom of movement. So that's how I would describe it in the first instance, but there's lots of details.
Very vivid, Mum. I'm going to pass it over to our veteran to open up the questioning now.
You seem to be very avid on this sort of thing. Are there any concerts in particular that you've been to that sort of invoke that sort of feeling, or that there's been mosh pits and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. So there was a festival that I went to several years ago now, about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a festival of prog metal that took place in Manchester, the Victoria Warehouse, and this was a day-long festival with multiple different bands across 2 stages, and there were 2 different types of mosh pits that I experienced in those particular on that particular day. The first one was a performance in quite a small space with a vast number of people that were really jostled together. So there wasn't space for much movement, but the idea was that you were all able to participate in listening to this band. This particular band, a really, really high energy band called Monuments, really, really great band. And like I say, very small scale in terms of the stage, but so much collision was happening. There was so much happening that just made it so exciting as part of that performance. The other performance was on the other side of the stage, the main stage of this particular warehouse, by a band called Thornhill. So they're an Australian band, Australian new metal band, founded in 2015. Australian metal bands would thoroughly recommend people go and listen to them. But the stage of that was ginormous, and it meant that the arena itself had a lot of space in it. Now, in terms of the mosh pit that was created itself, there was a breakdown that lasted for about 2 to 3 minutes worth of music, so a long old time. And what happened as part of this breakdown was people spread apart and made space, created space in this incredible audience. And I would say that the space that was created, we must have had at least 2,000-3,000 people in the audience, and a space was created probably bigger than 2 tennis courts put together. And this was this sort of breakdown of space, and then when the drop happened, everyone just came and collided together. So that was probably one of the most memorable experiences so far.
Great answer to a great question. George, can I pass it over to you?
Well, Mum, could you tell us a bit more, perhaps, about where they came to exist, or how, if there was a specific scene that they developed from, or anything?
Really good question. So the live music making is something that has happened for centuries. So in terms of collective music making and collective audience participation, that one would argue has gone back for as long as music has existed. In terms of the mosh pit in its current form, the way that you would probably label that is from the development of amplified music. So when the amp developed, you were able to have much larger audiences, much louder music, and this sort of pervasion of a much bigger sound world. So the sort of key starting point would have been, one could argue, sort of around the 1950s, 1960s. And from then, different genres kind of adopted different elements of these types of mosh pits. But the punk scene especially was one whereby people were given significant freedom to participate and to express themselves as audience members in response to the music that they were hearing.
Is it worth doing a mini explainer on punk music? Because again, I don't know, there might be students who this is their thing and they know loads, but there might be students who are somewhat vague on punk. Where did that come from, and who are maybe some of the key foundational acts in punk?
Oh my goodness me. So if you are interested in learning about the punk scene, you need to listen to the Sex Pistols. A really, really famous band from the British early scene, and the idea was that their performances were quite legendary in how kind of alternative they were. Now the idea of punk, the sort of the key element with it is the fact that this music was not sort of fine-tuned. It was the sort of quintessential DIY, so do-it-yourself style of playing. You would have musicians such as Johnny Rotten, who would be at the front performing on a very, very simple guitar or a simple bass, simple drums that would create chaos. And the point was that this music was simple, but it was performable, and it was performable by anyone, okay? That was the key elements, that it didn't require endless amount of tech. It didn't require endless amount of kind of key elements to create high quality music making. The point was that it was accessible to all people from across, well, certainly the British scene at the time, so 1960s.
Nice. Louis.
So what I wonder is, when you've got such a large audience and such large mosh pits, how is that all coordinated between everyone watching the performance?
That's a really good question. Yeah, so going back to what I was saying, the importance of safety in these sorts of settings is paramount and is accepted by everybody that goes into those spaces. The way in which it is managed is in those larger spaces there are security that provide safety in that element. So if they see that there are people that need a bit of space or feel like they need to remove themselves from that, they can support. But most importantly, it is the audience members themselves. The most important thing, the most exciting thing, and the most kind of inclusive element of these mosh pits is that you won't see anyone trying to start a fight. That's not the point of them, okay? You won't see anyone trying to throw punches. You won't see anybody trying to elbow people in the face. When we think of mosh pits, we do think of violence, right? You do think of something that is really kind of quite unnerving, quite scary from the outside. But when you are in it, the understanding is if someone falls down, you stop and you pick them up. Yeah, it is what I find so amazing about them as spaces is that, like, yes, it looks, there is a violence that you see, an energy that you see, but it is such an empathetic space whereby if there is a problem, everybody stops. I've seen hundreds of people just stop. There's been a light that's gone on and someone's been sort of looking on the ground because they've lost their wallet. And so everybody stops and said, okay, we need to find the wallet. I've seen random shoes being held up in the air because people have lost their shoe because they've been bouncing around too much. So the idea, in answer to your question, is that it is the audience's responsibility to look after each other. There are also the musicians themselves on stage, because obviously a musician that's on top of on a massive arena stage is able to oversee the crowd and can see mosh pits forming, will also encourage that to happen. Some of the best musicians that I've seen have been people that have slowed down the music and said, okay, is everyone okay? Is everyone feeling okay? If someone's not okay, can we make sure that we get them some help if they need to take a bit of time out? So in answer to your question, it's a collective responsibility, which is what I find really, really special about it as an experience.
Extending upon that, why do you think, because I mean, I was quite a metal fan when I was a younger person, a long time ago, a bit of a Metallica fan, a bit of a Linkin Park fan, just to give you insight.
Which we love to see.
Which I loved seeing, and I saw mosh pits, etc. But why do they have this? Because I feel like even me, as someone who went to these things, think of them as being violent and out of control and dangerous. And I'll be honest, I've never dared go into one. Why do they develop this reputation if they are so seemingly egalitarian?
It's a really, really good question, and I think it is one of the main questions of sort of how we perceive music, how we perceive live music, and how we perceive these genres in particular. The idea being that these are inclusive spaces. However, there is a perception from what we might say the outside world, or society in general, that when you look at these spaces, they might look like spaces you can't access. However, there is this kind of, I describe it as a dichotomy, right, between sort of society whereby there's the understanding that everybody sort of sits quietly, that you sit still, that you are expected. There are so many expectations in society that we must sort of behave in a certain way. But these particular spaces, they are kind of inversions of that expectation. And the inversion of it is itself really subversive. So we talk about these as subcultures, okay? So the punk space is a subculture. Metal or new metal is an example of subculture. It's people that might not deem themselves to be accepted in society. Maybe it's because of the way that they look. Maybe it's because of the way that they dress. That they might not deem themselves as being able to be part of those societies, or have chosen to not align themselves with certain values, or are actually choosing to take a different stance in their lives in terms of choosing to dress a certain way. These people, day to day, might still go about having daytime jobs. You sort of our regular 9-to-5s be working in their sort of standard industries like you might expect. But when it comes to a weekend, the ability to like put on your favourite dresses, to put on your favourite sort of bongo leather jackets, and to go and enjoy that space, it's a wonderful excuse for a performance by the audience members themselves, not just the musicians. So, in answer to your question, you're right that there is a perception, but it's that perception that I love talking about it, to be able to say, actually, there is more to it than meets the eye.
It's an interesting analogy with like the football and rugby crowds as well, that same idea that they are all part of a performance. It's getting that energy out and giving a release that might not exist. Now, what we're not doing is encouraging people to start rebelling in their next lesson. If you're sitting still at your desk, don't start an impromptu mosh pit. We've not given you the license to do that.
Because this is not the space now. That's what's really, really important.
Where is the correct
this is
space?
Apollo, not Dionysus.
I mean, that was the most Mr. Till reference ever, but yes, I agree.
That was the dichotomy that Mom mentioned.
Yes, no,
between
absolutely.
the expectation
Absolutely.
following,
Yeah.
and sometimes
No,
wanting to get a bit more primal and chthonic. Can I use the word chthonic on
You
the
can.
podcast?
You can.
Of the earth.
I
Lovely.
was going to say, I've, like a few weeks ago, finished reading The Storyteller by Dave Grohl, and that's all about sort of punk music and that thing, and the idea of the difference between what people expect of this sort of music and the difference between, like, the popular music and what's considered almost unknown and the underground scene and that sort of stuff. It's a lot about that sort of period in America of smaller bands touring across the whole country, barely managing to get by, and it's stuff like Nirvana, Foo Fighters, and so many other bands like that. And it's a really interesting book, which quite similar to this whole sort of idea.
It's where it all starts.
Book recommendations as well you're getting on the Ask podcast. Dominic.
That's why he's a regular panellist.
Don't mind who wants to jump in now. Anybody got something, a question that's really pulling at them at all? George, Louis, anything you want to contribute, suggest? Or perhaps your own experiences. Have any of you, are you big live music goers? Have you
Can I contribute something? When we were just
Please
before
do.
we came into the podcast, I asked whether either Evan or George had ever been in a mosh pit, and George replied with the funniest thing I've ever heard when he said,
Well, I've been in the humanities corridor.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
I've been laughing at for the entirety of the recording.
Fair enough.
So
no, I think
there
that's
are
fair.
there are chthonic happenings at John Hampden.
Good point.
Yeah.
So the
What I
corridor,
find-
We wish
not the
that
classroom,
we
but the
wish there were
corridor.
not, but
Well, this is what I find so interesting as part of this discussion, that when I say, and I go back to my original point, the idea is that these spaces, these mosh pits, they are consensual. They are things that people have agreed to go into, that have agreed to participate. We live in such a sedentary world nowadays, don't we? That there are, for various reasons, sort of requirements for us to sit still for a long period of time. Or if we are doing work, if we are trying to work, we might often consider that work to be static. And we as human beings, we are not built to be static every day, all day, are we? We are designed to move. We are designed, but we are designed to kind of have collisions with people, right? You know, if you think of your contact sports, like we are designed to feel like we can connect with people. I think post-COVID as well, it makes it so obvious that the importance of connection, and by this I mean that kind of physical connection is bouncing into people. What's really important is to always be aware of is everybody in that space okay with it? are the parameters of that space designed to keep people safe? Is everybody going to look out for each other should someone fall down, someone have a problem? Do we understand that there is safety as well as this exciting collision that's taking place?
Nice. I think you've proved your thesis well here, Mum. I think you've won me over, and maybe you'll see me at a future concert jumping up and down in a mosh pit. You never know. Has to be said, Mrs. Mitchell told me that she accidentally ended up in a mosh pit when she went to see The Enemy once upon a time. So I think we need to interrogate her more about that, because that I can't think of anything more incongruous than lovely Mrs. Mitchell being in a mosh pit. But maybe that's her spiritual home, and I just don't know that side of her. I think that it is time to do some quick fire and find out a little bit more about Mom. So this part doesn't have to be related to mosh pits or music, but it's 1 minute. It's quick fire questions. Could be anything, Mom, like really quick answers. I know exactly what Evan's question is going to be. Evan's got a repeat question that he comes back to. Maybe we should start with that as a controversial opener and see what Mom has to add to this. Okay, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Dog, cat, or other pet?
Oh, she's torn.
This is the quickfire round, Mum.
Other pet.
Oh, neither.
Favourite day of the week?
Saturday morning.
Yeah, nice, specific. George.
Favourite band or artist or musician?
How could you, George? Oh. At the moment, enter Shikari.
Oh yeah, cool, classic. Love it.
What's your go-to filling for a sandwich?
Love it. Favourite question.
Hummus and falafel.
Ooh, very nice. Favourite. Oh, go on. Sorry, Seth.
You can say film.
No, I was going to say crisp. Not quite so highbrow.
Favourite film and crisp.
Film and crisp. Favourite film? Ooh.
This is dead air. This is dead air.
It's great. Great editing for Barney to do later.
Or just a film you like.
A film. Ratatouille.
Lovely.
Yes. I
Watched
knew it was
Zootropolis at the cinema with my girls the other day, and there's a Ratatouille reference in it, and I thought that was very pleasing.
there. Yep. And favourite crisp? What's it?
Ooh, not one we
Favourite
fancy.
word to say?
Ooh. Anti-establishmentarianism.
Of course. A classic. I love that. And an interesting insight into Mum. We will stop asking you horrible on-the-spot questions now, Mum. I promise, because now we need to hear Mr. Till's clue.
There is a clue. Now, if you don't know how the clues work, you need to listen to the last episode where there was the first clue. Because if you work out what connects the clues and you email somebody from the Ask podcast, there is an extraordinary prize for the winner. What that will be, it's so extraordinary, I haven't worked out what the prize is going to be yet.
Brilliant.
But it will be worth having, don't you worry. We're not going to recap what the previous clues were, because you have to listen. Today's clue is mill.
Okay.
M-I-L-L, mill.
I
That
tried
is today's
guessing.
clue.
I tried guessing after one clue and said I was
It's a
nowhere near.
very good guess, though.
Was it? It was a good but undoubtedly wrong guess. But
Good but
yes.
wrong.
But thank you for your flattery in any case. So it leaves me to do the thanks. I think this has been absolutely fascinating. And as I say, I hope you're going to get out there and see some live music and experience this in all the different ways that it is meant to in our post-COVID world. We're allowed to have these safe collisions with people once again. So thanks to Mum for being an absolutely fabulous and incredibly informed guest, and I've taken loads of notes. And I'm going to go out and research some more. And thank you to our wonderful panellists, Evan, George and Louis, some of whom stepped in last minute and absolutely smashed it out the park. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, of course, to my delightful co-host, Mr. Till. And thank you to Barney in charge of AV today. He was just as enthusiastic as us. And thanks to the whole AV team for all the help that they've done. Do find us, of course, on all the usual platforms, Apple and, YouTube and all that kind of stuff. Good to see that Matthew, former student, I saw put a comment on the YouTube the other day. He is still an avid listener and was very pleased to see the podcast. So this is a shout out to you, Matthew, and I hope you're having a great time. So I think, unless I've forgotten anything, we will say goodbye and hope to see you very soon with another episode of the Ask Podcast.